G'day everybody, my name is Lowell and welcome to the channel. So we have some more college football slash American football. We're going to do the evolution of football helmets. So let's jump in. Let's have a look at this one.
This video is brought to you by Bombfell. This is the 1883 Navy football team. A notable team in the history of football because of this man right here, Joseph M. Reeves. After a physically brutal season, Reeves' doctor told him that one more hard hit to the head could possibly lead to what he referred to as instant insanity, or even death. Determined to play in the traditional rivalry game against Army, Reeves went to a local shoemaker and had him fashion a moleskin hat with ear flaps. And that's what would become the first helmet in football history. It wasn't much, but it was revolutionary for its time. So revolutionary that Reeves...
Wow, really? Okay.
Reeves took the design back with him to the Navy after graduating, and because of him, similar helmets were worn by pilots and paratroopers in World War I. In the early 1900s, soft leather helmets were introduced as...
Seriously? Okay, so it's okay. So not just used on the sporting field, but used in actual combat area too. Okay.
optional headgear for players, but many preferred to play without the helmets because of its leather material, which made it really hot, and the ear flaps, which made it difficult to hear the plays. In 1917, they rectified these problems with the ZH, also known as the Zupke helmet, named after Illinois coach Bob Zupke, who came up with this design that consisted of air holes for ventilation, holes in the ear flaps, and straps of fabric lining in the helmet that helped absorb and distribute impacts. This soft leather material was replaced in 1920 with hardened leather, creating the iconic look affectionately referred to as leatherheads. In 1939, high school football coach John T. Riddell introduced the first plastic helmet. In the following few years, an attached chin strap was added to the helmet, along with an improved suspension lining that allowed for a more comfortable...
Isn't that a big sports brand? I'm sure I've heard of that sports brand before. Okay. It's amazing how quickly it got to that point. Okay.
Fit. After seeing these Riddell helmets worn by the Green Bay Packers, General George S. Patton contracted Riddell and licensed the technology. The Army was redesigning the World War I era M1917 helmet because it was uncomfortable and offered inadequate protection, so Riddell's suspension system was implemented into the M1 helmet.
Really? Wow, okay. So, not only is obviously college football so ingrained through, that academic in school and, college, but also on the battlefield already. That's two helmets already. Now that you said that, okay, there's definitely some resemblance. Okay. Oh, wow.
Which were utilized by soldiers in World War II. During World War II, the demand for plastics rose overseas, and so it became scarce in America. That made the manufacturing of Riddell's plastic helmets difficult. Faulty mixes during manufacturing caused many helmets to break into pieces on contact. These were quickly banned by the NFL until the issue was eventually fixed. By 1943, helmets were made mandatory across the league, but these helmets were uniformly drab and boring, with a muted brown color that made it difficult to differentiate between the competing teams. But in 1948, Los Angeles Rams halfback Fred Gurkey, an art major while in college, had the idea of painting a design directly onto the helmet. He took a helmet home with him and spent the entire night meticulously painting his own design, which consisted of gold horns on
it looks like the Rams. Okay.
A blue helmet. Coach Bob Snyder and owner Dan Reeves loved the design and commissioned Gurkey to paint the design onto the helmet of every single player at $1 a piece. At the beginning of the 1948 season, when the Rams players first emerged from the tunnels of the LA Coliseum donning these decorated helmets, they were met with thunderous applause and a standing ovation that lasted for over 5 minutes.
Wow. Okay. Okay. Wow. An art student. That's a bloody good idea. Bloody good idea. Okay.
These helmets were offering protection for the player's head and ears, but they weren't offering any protection for the player's face. In 1955, Cleveland Browns quarterback Otto Graham took a vicious hit to the face, requiring 15 stitches across his mouth.
Yikes. Ow.
During halftime of the game, Coach Paul Brown worked with the equipment manager to quickly come up with a makeshift device made of clear plastic that would offer protection to Graham's mouth so he could finish the game. These lucite masks...
Isn't it funny how... when things happen, you probably never would have thought of it. But as soon as you need that, you know, you need to come up with something quick. And look how, and you can instantly recognize it, you know. Wow, that is interesting. Okay.
Helped, but they would become brittle in cold weather and would sometimes shatter on impact. Coach Paul Brown went to Riddell at the end of the 1953 season and described a revised face mask concept to their technical consultant. Give me something that will fit across the front of the helmet and will be about as big as my little finger, with tensile strength. I want it so it can withstand a stray foot, or a deliberately thrown fist or elbow, and take away the inclination to punch someone, but keep it light enough to weigh less than 1 ounce. Riddell came up with a single gray bar made of rubber and plastic, called the BT5 face mask. All Cleveland players were required to wear the bar by the coach, and other teams quickly followed suit. The following year, in 1956, electronics salesman George Sarles and GE engineer John Campbell approached the Cleveland coach with a radical idea. They explained how they could improve the communication and hurry up the speed of calling plays by placing a transistor radio inside the quarterback's helmet. This would allow the coach to deliver plays directly to the quarterback, as opposed to substituting players onto the field in order to deliver the next play to the huddle. Coach Brown loved the idea and immediately tested the device in an exhibition game. When the news of this invention caught on throughout the league, other teams scrambled to devise their own technology, none of which was as effective as Sarles and Campbell's. Cleveland was able to use the radio system for only 3 games, before NFL Commissioner Burt Bell outlawed the use of the device.
Isn't that funny how all that way back then, they already were thinking about that, and now they're introducing that, and it's in college football now. You know, I think this year was the first year, you know. You see him on the field kind of going like this, you know, trying to get that, you know, that sound. That is interesting. Wow. Way ahead of their time. Way ahead. Oh, my God. Okay.
Throughout the 1960s and 70s, thicker foam padding was added to the lining of the helmets, and an array of complex face mask designs were made available to the players, with the first full face mask appearing in 1975. And by the 1980s, the football helmet had become a complex, highly sophisticated piece of engineering equipment. In 1995, almost 40 years after Sarles and Campbell's cutting-edge idea, radio transmitters were finally allowed in the helmet of the quarterback, which allowed for better communication. In 2004, the classic single-bar face mask introduced in the 1950s was banned by the NFL, though kickers who wore it previously were grandfathered in.
2004. Well, I guess kickers, because, you know, they're obviously not going to get as much, you know, full-on contact as the other players, but man, okay.
The single bar made its final appearance in 2007 by Cleveland punter Scott Player. Protection
It kind of looks so out of place now, you know, looking at the full face mask and everything. That single bar just looks so out of place. But it's obviously got its place in history for sure.
Has always been the driving force behind helmet innovation. But as scientific data of football players continues to pour out, linking concussions to the degenerative brain disease CTE, the need for better protection and safety is greater than ever. It's become a scientific arms race between the 3 largest football helmet manufacturers, Riddell, Schutt, and Zenith, as they constantly seek new ways to improve and enhance their helmets for player safety. They're lining helmets with newer material like TPU or thermoplastic urethane for better shock absorption. Helmets are also lined with shock data loggers and shock detectors, which monitors the direction and the force of impacts. The problem with these detectors is that they simply monitor concussions after they've already happened, instead of helping to prevent them. In 2017, the Seattle-based sports technology company Visus introduced a new helmet that they hoped would reduce player concussions before they happen. The Visus helmet morphs or yields upon impact, like the bumper of a car.
I think people were saying about that, you know, the newer helmets have got those crumple zones. You can see them in the helmets. Okay.
With reflexive technology, the helmet can absorb linear forces, but more importantly, it can also absorb rotational forces, which are more prone to cause concussions. In 2018, the NFL and NFLPA released their annual helmet laboratory performance reviews, which already have Visus as the number 1 and number 2 rated helmet for safety. Much more will need to happen in the evolution of football helmets in order to keep players safe and to keep the game of football alive. But these technological advances are steps in the right direction. Football helmets have certainly come a long way since Reeves and his moleskin hat. This video is brought to you by Baumfeld.
That is very interesting. The way it kind of developed from just the needs of one person, you know, and that one doctor saying, look, you know, you need to wear something on your head. Otherwise, you know, it's lights out. See you later. And from that, developing over those years, you know, even though it seemed like a pretty quick, I mean, that was still 30 years between, you know, a leather and a plastic helmet. And then obviously the face mask, again, because of somebody's needs, you know, that 15 stitches in the face, that's a pretty big need. Surprising that's not come about in that 50 years or, you know, 40 years where they just had the open faces. Obviously, that one is pretty severe. 15 stitches is pretty severe. So, and I like that little tidbit about, you know, discouraging people from punching you in the face. You know, you're not going to punch somebody in the face if they have a big bar in their face, you know. So I like that little tidbit. But that was very interesting. Very interesting. Obviously, that coming down to, you know, through those years and then understanding that, you know, constantly hitting your head and CTE and all that kind of stuff. We get that in rugby as well. Obviously, we don't wear any helmets, but not quite as prevalent because obviously we're not smashing into, you know, heads into each other. But obviously it's still a concern as well too. So that was very, very interesting. I like that. I like the fact that those designs were then also given real world purpose as well. You know, World War I, World War II, you know, so interesting that development through this sport has had such a massive impact throughout history. That is very interesting. Very, very interesting. I really like that. So let me know what you guys thought of that. Thank you very much for joining me today. Make sure you stay safe, and I will definitely see you in the next reaction video. Did you enjoy that video? Why not watch another one?